And the big question, I probably should have led with this, but what kind of returns can you expect doing this? And I'll start by saying that I've got a pretty good sample size for the deals that I've done. I think I've into 80 or so far. And I'll give you kind of some of my key takeaways on what you can expect. And I'll tell you, number one, that there's a lot of variation in returns from deal to deal, and then I'll give you some of the averages. So when you're doing notes, I used to be big into games, and kind of the analogy I use is no investing is poker, it's not chess. So in chess, the best player tends to win. There's not a lot of variability. If you take a certain strategy, you can kind of expect a certain outcome sometimes. Whereas poker, the best player is going to win over time, but there's a lot of randomness in the middle, and that's kind of how note investing is. So really, it's best if you can do these with the intention of doing several and getting a decent sample, because you're going to have some that are amazingly good. You're going to have others that get sideways on you. But in general, if you're buying performing notes, I'm usually targeting an annualized return of 8 to 15%. And actually, most of the ones I'm buying are in like the 12 to 15% range. Now, of course, there's no free lunch with that. As you get into higher yields, there's usually higher risk involved with that as well. And if you check out, I've got a pricing course that's very cheap, where I go into pricing performing notes and I talk about some of that, assessing the risk. One of the big mistakes people make sometimes is they want to try to eliminate all risk, and then you can do that, but you're going to have a note that has a much lower yield, right? So if you're too risk averse in these, then you end up not getting any deals. The other mistake people make is they go, well, I'm a really good note investor, so I only want to buy things with like a 20% return. And then what happens is you have sky high risk, and so the only bids you get accepted on really, really junky loans. So mileage varies depending on the quality of the loan, but I think you can get 8 to 15% annualized returns with very reasonable, very favorable risk-reward profiles. Now, if you go into non-performing notes, this is where it's a crapshoot, especially when they turn in to REOs, because I've had a wide when you do non-performing and you end up with REOs, then your exit's all based on the value of the property. But you don't know the true value of the property because you can't inspect the inside. So if the note becomes an REO, I've had anywhere from minus 20% returns to plus 120% returns. It's really a big crapshoot. However, if I follow my model for non-performing notes, I get about 2/3 of them to reperform. And if I'm getting a note to reperform, then my returns are going to be about 30% plus annualized, and sometimes higher, depending on how well I was able to buy it. So what you're looking at is for me, about 2/3 of the time getting 30% plus, and then that other third of the time getting a crapshoot with some home runs and sometimes getting upside down on them. So another thing I really want to point out too is that, like I said, like this is poker. This is like a numbers game, and there's a wide distribution of outcomes. So if you do enough notes, you are going to end up with some REOs where you get upside down. It's a fact of life. One of my other pet peeves about the industry is I've heard people say things like, oh, if you do everything right, I never lose money on a loan. If someone tells you that they've never lost money on a note, then either they're a liar or they haven't really traded many notes and they're not very experienced. They could even be both. Who the heck knows? But it's a numbers game, and I'll tell you what, the numbers over time are super, super favorable, and I have the data to back that. And also, again, I'll just caution you not to what they call getting drunk on yield, right? So be a little careful about just trying to chase the notes with the highest yield because they often carry additional risks with them. So make sure you understand the risk profile of the loans and what your goals are, and make sure everything's in line. So, for example, I mentioned I like to buy performing notes from my self-directed IRA. I actually target lower yields in the self-directed IRA, right? Because I'm a little more risk averse in that I just want that to grow steadily. So those are some good things to think about.